Westworld Episode 3, The Stray. Now, this episode I think introduced something that it seemed like it was going to have a pretty obvious trail, but they changed it up in this episode, and that's the fact that the hosts are either being implanted with something by a third party, or something really, really crazy is happening, and it's not just kind of in a simple line like they kind of made it seem in the last episode, where it's like, okay, Episode 1, Delores' dad, Mr. Abernathy, he goes nuts, he kind of loses it, he does the, violent delights thing, and then the last episode, Delores does that for Maeve, and that kind of sends her into the crazy frenzy where she's starting to, activate her old, I guess, processes. I can't say memories, but she's starting to recount some of the old positions that she was in. So it's like, alright, seems simple enough. It seemed like a simple story. This happens, this happens. They don't realize it's happening. They're very minute differences. Little things happen here and there. Oh, I put it in sleep mode. This happened, that happened. And it's like, alright, that's normal. We know it's happening. They still haven't caught it just yet. And then this episode changes it up. We have a host that goes nuts. It's titled The Stray based on this host. So, excuse me. We have, I don't remember her name, so I'm just going to call her like the quality assurance manager. That I'm just going to call her the QA manager. So she goes out, and then we have our head of security. The two of them go out, and they have to find this stray that, kind of broke the loop and everything. And so it's just, he's going off doing this thing. So it starts off simple enough. I think we all knew it was going to be something, because like, oh, it's, it seems to be simple and it's just walking off. But it turned into something very serious, because it starts doing, and I have a guess for this, and I'll kind of save it for later, but it starts to carve into all of the little figures and stuff the star pattern for Orion. And that's not something that was programmed into it. So it's like this big mystery. It's like, why in the world was this thing, carving the star pattern into all of these figures? It's supposed to just whittle bears and tigers, not tigers, but bears and like mountain lions and cougars and stuff. And so it's like, what in the world is going on here? And it's getting a little weird. It's like, alright, this character, at least based off of what we've seen so far, this character hasn't come into contact with either Delores or Maeve. So it seems like that, that's not going to be the case, where it's not, it's not one of the dissonance things that they're like, oh, it's just dissonance here, dissonance there. They keep throwing that around like, oh, it's just like, whatever, that's an accident. So it didn't even seem to fit the pattern that we were shown in the last episode, where it's kind of a chain where this certain phrase kicks them off. It seems to be something totally different. And then, not only that, but we also get a bit of backstory as to what happened in the first episode, where the outlaw guy went rogue, and he's killing off all these people in the bar, and we find out that the people he killed in the bar were hosts that formerly killed him during other narratives that they were all placed in. And it's like he was holding a grudge, they say. And I was like, okay, I didn't see that one coming. That was a cool little touch there. And then we find out that they're talking to some person named Arnold. It was the outlaw character, and I believe Abernathy, I would assume. And they were both talking to this person named Arnold. And so we find out that Ford actually had a partner named Arnold in the early years, which allows us to get to see a pretty interesting CG version of Anthony Hopkins. I thought they actually did a pretty good job there. But we see the early years, and it's like, oh, it was really simple. Like, I think he mentions the first 3 full years of the park were actually just making the park, making all the robots. It was just building in science and the people doing what they love. There was no board of members or board of directors and all that crap. It was just, we're people that want to make new technology, and that's what they did. We saw them making the hands, and we saw them doing the dances and stuff, and we get to see the host from the last episode, the female host that introduced herself. I think the guy's name was Billy, the guy who's, I guess, with his brother-in-law, who he kind of doesn't like. We see her in that flashback. I was like, oh, she's actually a very old host too, so I thought that was interesting. But, they show the little dancing sequence and stuff, and it's just like, alright, they're going through this just adjustment period, this creational period where it's like bliss for them. And then things start to turn when Arnold wants to make something a bit more. He takes himself out of the sort of human element of what he does, and he puts himself completely into the robotic element, the technological element of things, where he separates himself from pretty much everyone, and he only speaks to the host, and he only wants to be around them. And they didn't say it, but it seemed like what Ford was hinting at is he didn't want to make robots, he wanted to actually create AI. It seemed like they got like as close to saying AI as they could without flat out being like, he wanted to make AI. So I'm assuming based on the explanation we were given, what he wanted, like this extra piece that he wanted from the host, was true AI. It wasn't, they say like, oh, he wanted them to have extra life, and they jump around it a lot, but basically he wanted actual artificial intelligence. He wanted them to be created and then grow from that and feel for themselves, and that's what he wanted. And they say that he died from an accident, but Ford mentions, he was very, very careful. So someone had him killed. They wanted him to die. They wanted to get rid of him, maybe because they thought he was getting too close to something that was dangerous, and they knew he wouldn't stop if he didn't, get to the part of making AI. And that was something that they didn't want, so they were scared of that. Like, these are machines that technically don't feel pain. They're programmed to think that they're in pain, but they technically don't feel it. They're just logical responses to feeling pain or feeling pleasure, but they don't actually feel any of that stuff, So maybe that's what it was. It was as simple as that. He was pushing the limits of mankind and technology merging into one or something, and they just didn't want that. Or maybe there's some deeper element. Maybe something he was doing had something to do with the maze, and they figured that out. And, that's kind of why they got rid of him. It's really hard to tell. So many elements, and, this being a new one, this brand new character. So, I don't know what to expect, but at this point, based on what, we have for Arnold, which is not much, my little theory going as far as this episode is that maybe Arnold himself is an AI, and I don't know, maybe it was something where it's like a self-working sort of deal where it had to build up over time to become powerful enough to actually infect the other hosts. And so maybe that's what happened, where he did that and he implanted his own mind into some early segment or part of the world, and it had to build up, or I don't know, maybe there was someone that was working with him or something like that. It's really hard to tell. Obviously it's just a theory at this point, probably a wrong theory, but considering that these components, or that the hosts, I should say, were actually talking to Arnold, I feel like there's got to be some part of him inside of the park. I don't think it was just, he was the one who made the commands and stuff, and, they mentioned, like, the only thing we kept were the voice commands. So, it's possible. It could be as simple as that, but at the same time, they were having full conversations. And, of course, with especially the outlaw character, like with Abernathy, he found a picture, and that's what set him off. With the outlaw character, he just didn't die. It was unintentional. For whatever reason, there was a glitch in the system. His programming didn't activate the sense of him going, oh crap, I'm dead, and then just falling still, even though it's like, no, you're totally fine, just get up. So, something random happened there, but then the part of him talking with Arnold and having this full conversation and stuff, something about that makes me feel like that's way more than just, it's recounting memories of conversations outside of Westworld, like what we see in every episode so far, where they sit them down and they speak to them. It seemed like it was way more than that. But it's possible that that's all it was, because, as Ford said, Arnold would take himself away from humans and he'd only talk to the host. So it's certainly possible that with this character currently being an outlaw, and based on what they say, where it's like those 6 other hosts were killed because they were hosts that killed the outlaw character before, it's possible that he's always been the outlaw character, just the narrative was different. He went after different people or did different, wrong things in different places, but he was always an outlaw. So it's possible that that crazy argument he had was something that made a lot of sense to have, with Arnold, where it's like, oh, what about this person or that person, or what are you doing today? It was all outlaw stuff. So it's possible that that still could have been a really old fragment that shouldn't have even existed. I don't think they normally erase those anyway, where they actually talk to the people outside of Westworld. They don't say, outside of Bernard, which I'll get to that, we haven't seen anyone say, like, erase this, log from your memories, or erase this transaction, or interaction, or not transaction, but interaction from your memory banks. We haven't seen that happen yet. So it's certainly possible that that is just a really old dialogue, but for it to happen with two different ones, I don't know. Like, it's a little hard. I feel like there's some part of Arnold actually in Westworld still, and it's just a little hard to tell. Like, it's hard to tell, but I'm excited to see where they take this stuff. I feel like there's going to be some element to it where Arnold still exists in some form. He found a very, very primitive way to keep himself alive, tech-wise at least. So I'm not really sure. I don't know what to really expect, but that's my little running theory, is that somehow before he died, he reached that final point of AI, and he was like, you know what? I know that someone's after me, or he felt, maybe he was paranoid even, but he was right, and he put himself into the world somehow. And for whatever reason, it just took a super long time to activate, or maybe it just required that one glitch, that one time when the update wasn't 100% soundproof and it wasn't perfect. That's when it would jump in and fill in that little glitch space. And that's what happened with the little reveries thing. That's when Arnold's programming was finally able to get past all the, perfection, and it was like, now I'm in, and now I can spread things. And maybe that's just how it played out. Maybe that's why Abernathy was finally able to get all the way back home, which they mentioned before. And maybe that's how it started. And now there are other little things where it's like, oh, I can jump from this host to this host, or this interaction happens that's not normal, so I'm going to take this thing and, get rid of the woodcutter or whatever, and, have it become the stray. So that's my theory for right now, but I could easily be wrong. There's so many mysteries with this, but, that was like a big element of this episode. It was a small section, but so much potential. That's why I want to spend so much time on it. But we, of course, do have other very important parts of this episode. We actually have a very important sequence for our hero of the episode, or of the series, sort of, Teddy. And he gets a new backstory, and it's a dark one. It's a real dark one, where he used to be in the army, and his, commanding officer, lost his effing mind and killed everybody, and was like, this world isn't meant for the natives or for us, it's meant for me, and he was just insane. And then, and I love this episode for it, because they always talk about, oh, you start in this city? It's easy, that's nothing, no big deal, you just have a little fun, go fishing, go on a little trip, find, wanted people or whatever. And his story, we have the woman who starts off in the episode, and she's going bounty hunting with him. And so she's like, alright, this is cool, I'm gonna, stick with the mission, and she keeps going. The other guy, he quits. So she's like, alright, I'm still with you. And they go through, and we really see how crazy things get. Because I was like, okay, they mentioned it before, Abernathy used to be a part of, a cannibal thing in the hills and stuff. I was like, alright. They always talk about how the further out you go, the more serious it gets and the crazier things go. But we really saw it in this episode at the end. And they kill the sheriff or whatever, so it's just Teddy and this girl, and she loses her freaking mind. She's like, holy crap, I know I'm in a game basically, but this is way too realistic. These people are dressed up in animal, they're cloaks, but they have animal horns and stuff, and they're crazy ghost ninjas or something, just crazy and seemingly demonic. And I was like, this is really freaking nuts. And they kill the sheriff, and they have it where Teddy gives her a knife, and he's like, get out of here. And so she takes off. She freaks out. And I was like, that would happen with a lot of people, even though it's fake. That was really intense. They got surrounded and everything, and they're shooting and stuff. And it was really cool to see that. I was like, man, they weren't kidding. It does actually get intense the further out you go. And I love seeing that. I thought it was really cool. And the way they filmed it, it didn't look like Teddy was killed. I think we'll get to see his story continue to play out. I don't know if he'll just be dead and then, it'll start over in the next episode. But it didn't actually look like he was killed. It looked like maybe he was beat up, and they would probably take him and his story would continue, and we just see what would happen if there wasn't a person. Because that's something they do. Whereas, like, we've seen Delores and Teddy interact with each other since episode 1, and it's different. And, we had Teddy with this woman early on where she's like, hey, let's go bounty hunting. But when he gets to the village, or, he gets to the town, that's when he sees Delores again. So, like, they will always meet up in the town. Even if someone takes him right when he gets off the train, if someone takes him away, something will happen where Delores won't go into the city. And so eventually, it's meant to time up where it's like, okay, he's getting back to town. He sits in the bar. She finally comes out of the door. So it's always meant to time up that way, which I thought was cool. Because when it first happened, I was like, that doesn't make sense. Because when we see the first episode, as soon as he got off the train, she was right there. So it's pretty clear it's not just a time thing. It's also like they're basically, unless someone literally stops them, they will just pause. They pretty much just pause in place, and it's like, alright, he's closer to the village or she's closer to the village. Now they can meet up, and then we see what happens. So I actually thought that was really cool when they kind of introduced that idea in this episode. So we'll see what happens in the next one if he ends up getting captured and killed. But I think we'll actually get to see it. What'll happen when there aren't any players around or any guests around. We'll see what happens with Teddy and Wyatt. And we'll see their interaction, and then he'll probably get killed off or something. And then it'll start over, and we'll see what happens with the Man in Black. I assume that's going to be the next episode when they're actually in the battle. So I'm actually really excited to see how that story is going to play out, because even though they're all fake characters, it kind of doesn't matter. I think it'll be cool. And considering the Men in Black showed up with Teddy, there's some element there. Maybe that's where, like what the girl said in the last episode, maybe that's where he just it happens to be. So he's like, well, I might as well join, the little battle, so I'm not just on the field for no good reason. I'll join the battle, get rid of this side, and maybe he'll kill off the whole other side once he's finished so that he doesn't have anyone in his way. Who knows? But I'm excited to see all that stuff play out. Of course, the stuff with the Stray, we get that first big moment where it's like, okay, this isn't just Maeve when she woke up and the guys thought, oh, you screwed up, you idiot, you made a mistake. This is like, no, I definitely put him into sleep mode, and then he knocked you down, and I thought he was going to kill me, but he bashes his own head in, so it's like, alright, we might need to talk about this, because something's effed up now. So I'm excited to see the big steps, because this isn't like, it's not behind the scenes anymore now. It's like, no, I thought I was going to get crushed by a freaking boulder when he lifted this thing up over his head, but then instead he ends up crushing himself, and he dies. So I don't know exactly how that's going to play out in the next episode, but it has me very excited. We have Delores successfully defending herself against the crooks at the end of the episode, and I love that. Like, the whole episode is her like getting these flashes of what she remembers and doesn't remember, and like she sees her dad, but she sees both images of her dad, both versions of her dad. And then when she's taken into the barn, she actually gets the gun and she kills the guy, but she hears the voice that says kill him or shoot him, which I can't tell if that's supposed to be Arnold or Bernard. Like, I really can't tell. And I don't know what he's doing, Bernard. I don't know if he's doing this on purpose, if he's the one manipulating it. I don't think he is, based on the conversations we're seeing. And then they have the part where Ford's like, don't forget that they're fake, and it's like kind of a perfect time to say that, because he's given her Alice in Wonderland and stuff, and it's like, I used to read this to my son. And I was watching it with my girlfriend, and she was like, he's making a huge mistake, and I was thinking the exact same thing. Like, he doesn't know that he's making as big of a mistake as he is, but at the same time, maybe he does. It's really hard to tell if he's doing this on purpose, if he's the one doing it, because he's like, oh, erase this transaction. And I don't know. It could be that she was the first one he worked on because she was the oldest one there. So it's like, she's the oldest one. Work on her so you get to truly understand the host. That would make a lot of sense to me, and that's why he has such a big connection to her instead of any of the other hosts. But at the same time, it's really hard to tell because what they do is so specific, which they mentioned before. Ford is like, what we do is so intricate. For someone to, tamper with that, that's not easy. It has to be someone there. Or, if it's Arnold and the whole, like, actual Ghost in the Machine type thing, it would have to be him. And it's just hard to tell what's happening with Bernard. Like, I just don't know. Like, he's giving her the book, and he's messing, like I said, he's messing up more than he realizes, but it's just really hard to tell what his true purpose is. And it seems like it's innocent. I think it really is a way for him to somehow cope with with the loss of his son and stuff like that, even though it's a woman and everything is totally different. But it's like, it's just a way for him to talk and to be like, talk with someone or something that is like a child, where they kind of learn over and over again. And he's trying to figure out, like, why is she having certain responses and stuff, and it's like, okay. And he noticed it. He was like, alright, things are getting a little weird. He does the improv stuff, and it gets weird to him. So there are a lot of elements there that are hard to pick up. You just don't know what's going to happen. But she ends up surviving that, and she sees, like, the memories when she escaped before, but she was shot. And then it's like, oh crap, that's the guy. He's going to shoot me and kill me. I got to take off. So she takes off into the forest. She ends up running into the guy Billy and his brother-in-law. I believe his name is Billy. So now they're in the the little thing at the end of the night, which they also reference in that scene. It costs $40,000 a day. Like, everyone's like, oh, it costs this much money. It's so much money. We know exactly how much it costs now. So that's insane. $40,000 a day, which is insane. The man in black has been there for 30 years, and it's $40,000 a day. That's freaking nuts. But they're together now. We know they're gonna, like, rob a stagecoach or something like that, which I'm sure the brother-in-law is gonna love. But that was in the promo of the last episode, so I'm assuming that'll happen in the next one. But fun episode. It's about to get even crazier, but of course, I want to know what you guys thought about this one. So please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, or least favorite parts, and I want to know what you guys think now that we've seen we've gotten the information on Arnold, and we've seen yet another stray that wasn't even connected to kind of the line of the Abernathys and Maeve. What the heck is going on there? So I just want to know all your predictions and theories on it, and of course what you thought about the episode in general. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.